Hello, greetings, Guten Tag, and Moobarkfluff to all the creatures in the Podiverse. I am Barely Normal, and welcome to Barely Furcasting featuring Taebyn. Today, without Taebyn, as they are on their way to Furlandia on this day that we are recording. Today's episode is going to be a break from our normal nonsense to bring you some, I guess, abnormal nonsense? No. But with Taebyn busy, we thought it would be a great time to focus on a good friend of the pod. So please welcome to our special guest for the day, Cassidy Civet. Hello, Cassidy.
Hello. It's great to be back on here. I'm still one for every season, and we're starting this one strong.
Yep. Well, thanks for coming on the show. So now for listeners that may be unaware of Cassidy and her contributions to the furry fandom, she is an accomplished musical artist, not just furry music, a contestant on Eurovision and Canada's Got Talent. Are there any other shows that you've been on?
Well, I'll be working on my Survivor audition tomorrow, so
okay.
I won't be wearing my fursuit for that, though.
Well, I would hope not. I think Survivor, you usually have to wear like a loincloth and really bad, dirty dreads.
That'll be my hair after living on the beach for 3 weeks.
That right? Yeah. It's like, and having to look at the service table where all the crew gets to eat all their food and stuff, and the Survivors people can't.
All you can do is hope that the wind direction will blow the scent into your general direction.
Maybe a crumb will fall in your mouth. But so recently, Cassidy's been the focus of some controversy that has caused a little bit of discontent. So let's jump right in. You were unceremoniously removed as the guest of honor for IndyFurCon, and this has brought a cavalcade, I like that word, of videos, responses, tweets, and social media hullabaloo, to use the title of one of your albums. So tell us what happened, in your own words. Tell us what happened.
Okay, first, I will just pick apart your initial statement there,
okay,
because I like the word cavalcade too, but cavalcade of videos? No, there hasn't been a single video made on the incident. I'm going to be the one making the video. But there has been a lot of social media hullabaloo, which as well is not an album, but the song I brought to Eurovision this year. Easy mistake, because they call the singles the name of it, so it looks like an album, but I get it.
Yeah, I saw the picture and I thought it was an album cover. I was like, oh, he's got an album called Hullabaloo. So yeah.
But yeah, so what happened? Well, it was on that day. I don't have the date burned into my memory somehow because I'm good at not dwelling on things, but I got an email while I was at work that basically, and I put my screenshot of the email in my tweet when I initially reacted to this, where they said, the board has decided we're no longer going forward with you. Have a nice day. And I was like, okay. I just stared at this email at work. I'm like, do I make a tweet about this? Do I need to make a statement about this? And then IFC answered for me and put out a press release about it, which to me, I found very interesting. And I'll be pointing this out in my video. I encourage anyone who has further questions to check that out once it drops, probably by the end of the month. Okay. But they put out a press release on a guest that they had never confirmed. They'd never even reached out to me. Other than announcing me at the in-person closing ceremonies at the con last year that I was at. No one from the con ever reached out to me. No one from the board ever talked to me. It was complete radio silence for 8 months after the initial ask from their con chair, who actually stepped down at the end of closing ceremonies last year, the same ceremonies that I was announced at. So I was like, okay. The chair also had reached out to me from their personal account, not the con's account. So I literally never had communication with the con or anyone who was currently staff with the con. So then to just get the rug pulled out after 8 months of radio silence, it was disappointing, because you really want to believe that people, especially in this fandom, operate with good intentions, and you'd certainly be excited to be approached to be a guest somewhere. And to feel like I was led on like a sucker for 8 months off of pure goodwill alone and not a single name on a contract or anything like that, it's something I will never forget. I'm not going to be taking advantage of that again by a con, that's for sure.
Right. So do you feel like so you never heard from the board?
I never heard from anyone other than the former 2022 con chair.
Okay. And in his personal emails, if you care to share what he said, or they said, was there anything encouraging about being the guest of honor? Or did they say, hey, I'm out, they're a bunch of twats, I don't want to work with them anymore, and good luck? I mean...
I wish that it had that kind of subtext to it, but the message was really quite straightforward. It just said, and I have it now pulled up in front of me. Hi,
Mm-hmm.
I'm the chair of IndyFurCon in Indianapolis, Indiana. On behalf of the board and staff, I was wondering if you'd be interested in being our performer guest of honor in August 2023. If this is a good place to talk, feel free to reply here, or if email is better, hit me up at chairman@indyfurcon.com.
Okay.
Which is not a private email, that's just the generic con email. It just changes hands every year to whoever's chair. But that was all that was really said. That was the ask. And they said they had the board's permission to ask, but I don't know.
Yeah.
And like I said, they put out a press release on Twitter about it too. They put out the press release before they even had a functioning website. The website is just, it's just a single image announcing the new venue. The website is still not up. I know. They prioritized throwing a guest that they'd not confirmed under the bus over like con prep, which I think is a really interesting choice.
Yeah.
Might say more about maybe the state of the board and staff potentially.
It could be. It could be. So the story broke on Flaira. That's where I saw it. That's when I was checking the Flaira site as I usually do, and there it popped up, and I thought, oh no, that's terrible.
Yeah.
And then I read the article, and I scrolled down, and you had quite the rebuttal. There was that was a lot of scrolling to read your rebuttal to that article. So do you think the author accurately portrayed the situation? The author of the article.
I do. It was written by Tantru McNally. He's got a YouTube channel too. They're a great creator in the fandom, and they did a good job of kind of, at least from, I'm sure, what they understood to be possible issues or reasons why it might have happened to me, because they kind of cherry picked, one, you said like recent controversy. I seem to get in controversy every so often, usually because I am expressing opinions or just speaking on behalf of myself as a musician in the fandom, just wanting to be treated fairly. But the controversy that was mentioned, I addressed in that long comment. It was part of why the comment was so long, because I didn't feel that what he had brought up was connected to the IFC situation. Because there are things that I believe are connected to it, like I mentioned in the comment about Fernal Equinox or MCFC, the other cons of the year that I had done where there were problems. I think those are a lot more connected to the thing with IFC, as opposed to the very minor scandal between me and the singing furry.
The singing furry. That's right. Yes.
The one and only.
The one and only singing furry.
You know it's true because they call themselves that.
Well, I guess I can call myself the podcasting furry. And,
you're the only one.
There I am, the only podcasting furry. Yes,
yeah.
There. I claim it. Therefore, it is mine. I put a flag. I stick a flag in it.
It's yours forever now. You should just submit it to BLFC, the podcast, the furry podcast.
Right. So, in your rebuttal, you made some pretty serious accusations about the state of the fandom and the clickiness of it. You want to tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. Everything I said, I stand by. I worked on that comment for about 4 hours while I was at work. Also, I just had the page on my computer and I was typing furiously, and my coworkers were like, "Are you writing an email to the boss?" I'm like, "No, it's far less serious than that. It's dumb internet bull." The fandom is cliquey. I don't think that's in itself news to anyone.
No.
But it's what I said in the article as well, and I'm probably going to misquote myself because I don't have the article pulled up in front of me right now, but I said, there should be more to conventions than the people that are there. Because I get it. Everyone tells everyone else to go to this convention because their friends are there, or their friends are at this one, or this one, or this one. And that's great. Friends are a great reason to go to conventions, but what about the rest of the convention? What about the panels? What about the events? What about the spaces? What about the creators that are involved? Like, you don't need to go to the dealer's den and find someone that's doing autographs or whatever, but just, it's up to the con. If the con doesn't make spaces for performers or for even different people, then truly nothing will change. And I do think that the cliquiness of the fandom right now is really coming through, because we've just finished, quote unquote, the pandemic, right? So we a big air quotes finished. It's on hiatus.
Done, yes.
It's going to come back with
over.
a
Yes.
comeback album, I'm sure. But
Oh, yes.
but I think that we're looking at a fandom that hasn't really adjusted to this post-COVID-y world. One thing I tried to do, because I hadn't done a lot of American cons pre-COVID. I only had done 3, I think. I had done FC 2019, where I met you. I did Furvana 2019, which was the first time that con happened. And then I did MFF 2019. And those were the only 3 American cons I had done in that year. And then I did FC again and TFF in 2020 before the world shut down. But while the world was shut down, I really went out of my way to get involved with as many virtual cons as possible, because even when we were apart, I wanted to maintain the fandom's, the variety of events. I wanted to perform even from home, because I had just gotten my suit. It wasn't even a year old yet when the world shut down. So I really wanted to just put myself out there. That's the only thing I was doing. I did virtual concerts for like a dozen cons I have never been to, cons that I may never do. Who knows? But I put myself out there. I offered my services. The con said yes. And I got to perform. And so then when the world opened back up and I went back to these cons, I was like, hey, remember when the world canceled your event for 2 years?
Right.
Well, I'd like to go in person now. Can I have a concert? And they would be like, no.
Okay.
And I would be just like, okay. And sometimes it would just be a no. Sometimes they'd be like, we don't have any of the staff from the virtual year left. It's like, okay.
So?
Yeah, so? Like, I don't want to say that it was like a quid pro quo situation where I was expecting something in return, but we were all in that same place. We were all stuck in our homes and we were all looking for things to watch and entertainment. And I set up a little performance space downstairs in my house, and I did all the concerts there, everything. And then I come in person and it's like, okay, well, we've removed the barrier of the computer screen. And now that we're face to face, you feel more confident to tell me no because you have all your friends back here and you'd rather give them the spots. Okay. And that's the world that I've been in. I've found myself in a fandom that pretended to open its arms when we couldn't be together. And now that we can be together again, the walls have gone back up, and it's really sad.
Yeah. How long have you been performing at cons then? So you mentioned the virtual cons, and when you and I met at FC, you didn't perform that. I don't remember you. Did you perform that con? I don't know that you did.
That's another fun yes/no answer.
Okay.
No, in that I didn't have a concert at FC 2019.
Right.
But yes, I performed in the talent show, FC Unleashed.
That's right.
I was
yes, you did.
The opening person.
Yes.
I didn't have my suit yet. I had one song released, and I went up on stage in my Kigu and I sang a cover song. And just from that performance, that's what kind of launched me, so to speak, into believing that performers could exist in the fandom. Because I got approached after the show, having just sang a cover song in my Kigu by a staff member from TFF who was like, hey, we're always looking for musicians for TFF. Would you like to be a musician at TFF 2020? And this is FC 2019. He's asking me about a con 14 months away.
Right.
Like, I'm shocked. This is my first American con, and this is happening to me. This is what can happen when you put yourself out there. You can't be afraid to take those risks. And even at my first American con ever, I was ready to go on that stage.
Awesome. Okay. Do you feel like cons treat all performers equally? Why or why not? I mean, obviously, you're going to say no. So, but tell me why not?
Yeah, I will use the why or why not for my answer. Treating performers equally, why or why not? I would say not, of course, as you assumed.
Yes.
Because I think that the people in charge at the cons, whether it's the chairs or executives or board or program leads or whoever, there are sort of different fronts that you face when you are deciding who to platform at a convention. You have the friends front, which is like, these are the people you know personally. These are the people you might owe favors to, and you're going to prioritize them. And then you have the outsiders, the people who you haven't heard of, who just put in a request and maybe they don't get given as much consideration. And I often point out my own circumstance where I'm like, I'm from the west coast of Canada, I'm from Vancouver, I'm the outsider, and I'd love to perform at these grand old American events. And they're like, that's great. No, but they don't even give it a chance.
Uh-huh.
And so when I say are performers treated equally, I think that numbers online is a factor as well. And I think it's also a question of what numbers do you pay attention to?
So numbers online of what?
Followers, watches,
Oh, okay.
streams, all
Okay.
the numbers. I think people have forgotten how, like, I think it was around 2013, 2014, where Facebook was trying to become a video platform. And they were
Mhm.
like, hey guys, Facebook video, move here. Look at all the views. Look at all the money you could make. And you had
Mhm.
creators like College Humor move and shift a lot of their stuff to Facebook because it seemed so promising. But then what
Mhm.
happened? Like 3 years later, it came out, oh, all the numbers were BS. No
Mhm.
one made any money. It was all a lie. It was a trick.
Mhm.
So me personally, I look at some of the numbers and I wonder what numbers matter. Does a Twitch number matter? Does a TikTok follower number matter? Does a Twitter follower number matter? Or is it more about the output? And that's
Mhm.
why when I say performers are not treated equally, I see performers getting spots on main stage who have no catalog, no original music, and just go up there singing Elton John covers or whatever, and
Mhm.
they get main stage.
Mhm.
When you have furry performers who might not have 10,000 followers on Twitch, who might not
Right.
have a few hundred on TikTok or whatever, but they've got 10 albums,
Mhm.
but they don't get anything.
Mhm.
So it's what numbers matter. Do we care about how impressive someone's following is or what their actual output into the fandom is?
Mhm. Have you talked to any programming board members on any cons and asked them what they look for in a performer or things like that? Have you done any background to back up I mean, it's a claim.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have any hard facts to say this is what they look at?
Do I have the hard facts? No. I don't have a lot of one-on-one talking with programming leads themselves.
Mhm.
I find sometimes the programming leads can be the decision maker.
Mhm.
I will bring this up in my IFC video. For example, the programming lead at MCFC this year, one of
Mhm.
the cons that I had some other drama with before this all happened, they got caught copy pasting the schedule from 2022 into 2023 with no
Okay.
changes, virtually no changes. The only thing they
Okay.
removed was a Pepper Coyote concert, and then he got one anyway at the last minute. So, and then this program lead goes into the con chat on Telegram and says, "Yeah, we didn't get enough panels. Please email us your feedback at this address." And I'm just fuming mad because they rejected all of my panels.
Mhm.
So if the person who's in charge of programming is, what's the easiest word to describe? Lazy,
Mhm.
and they retain their position of power, then there's truly nothing you can do. Oh, and a bonus fact, the programming lead from FCFC happens to be on the board of IFC. Don't you just love it when
Mm.
lazy people are in power? It's
Yeah,
so
well, they
cool.
they cross over a lot of times, and that's pretty common to see board members on numerous boards for various cons. I mean, they do move around, and that's
Yeah.
how they quote
And
unquote
I
make their living, I
love the
guess. So,
staff that make the cons happen. I love
mhm.
going to cons. That's why I, from Vancouver, fly my butt out to Detroit, go to St. Louis, Missouri. These are
Mhm.
places that I normally wouldn't go, but they have a con and it's super out of the way for me, but it's fun. I don't really go to cons to like have a bingo sheet of friends that I want to see and like punch them
Mhm.
all off. I did my MFFs and my BLFCs. I don't know if I'll ever do them again.
Mhm.
I don't go to cons to have 10-second interactions in the hallway with people that I'd like to see.
Right.
I
Yeah.
have other reasons that I go, and that's why I put in for panels or events, and I like to attend panels and events.
Mhm.
But it just seems like they're starting to matter less and less to cons who'd rather just either keep things the way they are or just don't want to change anything. There's no will. With no will, there's no way.
That's true. That's true. Now, your main criticism of most of the cons appears to be surrounding the professionalism of the cons. We've touched on this a little bit
Mhm.
before. Do you feel that as a con gets bigger, it may become too overwhelming for a volunteer board to manage?
Yeah, this is a good question. I haven't been on a con board myself. I have been submitted multiple times for a few different boards to be
Hmm.
on, but I haven't made the cut yet. Usually the factor is that I'm young and
Hmm.
they need some like liability and you usually need to have some kind of a financial ability to participate in a board. As weird as it is to say, because at least that's what I've been told. Is they say, if someone were to sue the event, then the board is on the hook, and if you don't have, money, you can go bankrupt or something. I haven't been on a board yet, so I only kind of hear the hearsay reasons why I haven't made it. But I guess you don't really see a lot of under 25-year-olds on con boards usually anyway. So, I don't feel as gatekeeped from the boards as I do the cons, but the professionalism is definitely a factor. It's a bit reflective of this changing state of the fandom right now, I think. I have an example, not of con specifically, but of this increasing professionalism in a good way. Something that we've never had before in the con, or in any con. There is a music act called Sarah in the Safe Word, who performed at Anthem New England earlier this year. They performed at TFF this year, but they are not like a wholly furry band. They are a real band that's signed to a real label with a lead singer, Sarah herself, who is a furry, but they are a label band, which means that when they're performing at cons, they're not performing for free, which means that they are the first musician act, period, at a con to be paid.
Okay.
So the professionalism of the fandom is going to increase inevitably, I think, at this point, where we actually have a label act who is a furry, but can't perform for free because they're on a label, performing at our cons. I'm not at that level, believe me. I wish I was on a label. But when we're talking about how cons can be professional, and then comparing that to volunteer boards managing things, lately, I've noticed volunteers becoming a bit of a excuse, becoming a crutch. I've seen it in FWA, where like people were saying the board gets paid, but not the volunteers. But then they have money to hire outside DJs that are not even furries. So it's like, okay, where is this money going? What is it doing? Or a few days ago, you had Fur Affinity with their fun new rule change, which we won't get into here. But they too said, we're run mostly by volunteers, so be nice. It's like, this is a crutch now. Like, I get it. Volunteers are super important. Thank your volunteers. Volunteer for conventions if you like the convention. Help out. Everything helps. But at what point do volunteers as a collective start to take the place of the decisions from above? And that's what I'm starting to wonder, where it's like, what is the professionalism aspect when the board's first act essentially is to throw the volunteers under the bus and or just to be like, hey guys, we're a volunteer event. No need for criticism. We're trying our best. Like there's a point that's, to me, it's just starting to feel hollow. We have cons hitting 5 figures worth of people. FWA had 10,000 people. MFF, 13,000 people. And their boards are being paid. And they've got hundreds of thousands of dollars squirreled away in bank accounts. I know that to be true. And it's like, okay, well, you want to be professional or do you want to be a volunteer organization? Because people are being paid now. So you guys have to either catch up or I don't know what's going to happen, because I don't hear those conversations. I just know the people that I know that tell me information that I know to be true. And I don't like to see the volunteers get kind of thrown away like that or blamed for things because no one will take responsibility. It's like an excuse to not take accountability.
Well, and as a board starts to get paid, then you would expect that the professionalism and the organization of the con should get better. You would think.
You would think.
But I've seen this in a number of organizations as they get to a plateau, and then they don't know where to go from there until somebody with some know-how says, okay, this is how you elevate to the next level. This is how you move this forward. I made a decision last year, and I volunteered for a tiny, tiny, tiny little con here in Oregon called Get Out the Float. And you can now say that you actually have been talking to a program director for a con because it's me. For
I'll have con. I've been program director actually. once before for a local Vancouver con, small one, Halloween. So I've done
Halloween.
that too.
Yeah. So there you go. So, one of the things that I talked to the board, because they basically started out as a weekend meet, and now it has grown into this thing. Right. Now it has grown into this convention. And so I started asking questions being on the board now. I was like, okay, so who's your attorney? Is your 5013C status filed? Do you have, and they wanted to serve alcohol at this con. And I was like, that's a bad idea.
Oof.
That's a bad idea.
I can't even think of a con that serves alcohol on its own that isn't like part of the hotel contract.
Right. The hotel con. I mean, BLFC, FC, they do that at the night events and all other kind of stuff. But they wanted to have...
You can't just have beer on tap without the hotel being involved or whatever. The hotel is, or whatever the venue is, has to be involved.
Right. Exactly. And that's what they were going to do. The venue was going to provide this. And I thought, that's a bad idea because it ups your liability as a board. It ups your liability because you're inviting kids to this event. You're going to have people that are under 18, under 21. And do you really want... I apologize for the sirens if you can hear them. I live next to a fire hall.
It's the con board coming to get you.
That's right. Yes. They're like, don't talk bad about us. But they constantly call me and ask me questions. Because I ran a multi-state nonprofit organization for a number of years. And so I knew the things that you have to have in line if you're going to do this thing.
I think that kind of experience can scare some of the people that run these events too, because you don't want to come in like you know everything, because then you will immediately get seen as a, know-it-all.
Right. And I try to come in there saying, listen, I know you guys are young, and nobody wanted to step forward, because at the last one they had, there was 2 panels. There was Taebyn Sings Weird Al and the Barely Furcasting podcast. Those were the 2 panels that were at the con. The only 2, yeah. So we kind of got tapped to. So my first thing was, I said, oh, okay, if we want to have, and there's a main stage, if you will, but it's in their big thing is that they're bouncy houses. So they have huge amounts of inflatables and bounce houses and stuff like that. And they use this big venue that's got lots of room to put these huge bounce castles.
Alcohol into the equation?
Yeah. But there's a stage right there. And I said, do you want to have any acts on the main stage? And they're like, well, but there's the bounce castles in there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, okay, so that's a no. So I'm like, yeah, we don't want to have music. And I said, that's fine. I said, we got the second stage. We can put acts there. And that's when I got to thinking, and there's a question we'll get back to later, but why is the main stage such a sticking point for you as a performer? Because that seems to be one of that's your underlying theme in a lot of your rebuttals, is the whole main stage thing.
See, I know that I mentioned main stage a lot, and I think that it might give the impression, I know certainly some people have the impression that I'm just like wholly dead set on only performing on main stage at any con that I'm at. I only want to be on main stage. That's not true. I said in my MFF video that, like, when I bring up main stage, more so it's the example, or it's the only obvious place where a music act could go. Because yeah, you can stick a musician in a panel room. I've performed in panel rooms, but so it's the easiest kind of shorthand way to ask, okay, well, how are musicians being treated? Who is getting the best spot? Because yes, main stage is a sticking point, but take BLFC or MFF, for example, right? They've got 1, 2, 3 stages.
Right.
So you can tell kind of, who's getting priority, who is getting the best quote unquote spot. Though for some cons like BLFC, there is debate is which stage is better, the second or the main stage. I actually kind of have an example for that. Was BLFC, I think, either 21 or 22. I don't remember if it was last year or the year before, but this is not an example specifically to put anybody down.
Right. No, we're not. We're just talking. We're just talking. We're not being critical at this point. Yeah.
Talking in numbers and talking in what the stages mean for who's on them. So BLFC had 2 charity concert shows. I forget if that was last year or 2021, but on second stage, it was a 2-hour show, and you had a total of 4 people go on stage, primarily Pepper Coyote. So it might have been 21. Dragor, who is chair for First Squared, Chris the Comedy Bun, who's a Midwest personality as well, and me. I went on stage and performed with Pepper, and I was in fursuit, and I did antics in the crowd.
Right.
I almost sounded like antics, but no, antics in the crowd. Because every charity event needs a cute fursuiter doing things, right?
Sure,
So I thought I could do that. I'd never done
Get
it
the
before.
money, man.
So yeah. So 2-hour event, 4 people on stage, on second stage. Now let's look at the main stage happening at the same time.
Okay.
BLFC put these 2 charity concerts at the same time. What was happening on main stage? Well, their event, 3 hours, 15 people, and our event, 2 hours, 4 people. We outraised them.
Well, yeah.
That's the mic drop moment. We outraised them because I just don't know if the fandom is as hot on those particular people or the brand of content that they represent anymore, because it's not 2014 YouTube anymore in the fandom. We've kind of grown past that a bit. And it's not to say that their contributions aren't valuable or that they're not talented in their own ways or et cetera and et cetera.
Right.
But if they're trying to make a statement about who's performing where, and you put the singing furry with no catalog on main stage, and then you have Pepper, who's got 3 albums, and let's just be honest, the biggest following of any furry musician in the fandom, period. And he gets second stage, and we still out fundraise them in less time.
Yeah.
So when I say what numbers matter, this should be a factor too, right? If a con is trying to position events to do well for charity, do you want to have them both go head to head at the same time even? That seems bad right out the gate. And then even
that does
from
seem
that,
like a bad programming choice right there.
And then you put the fandom's most popular musician on the second stage, like you're trying to make a point, and then we did better. Like, it's not supposed to be a competition, but when we're looking at who's getting treated in what way and how different the opportunities are, and I'm looking at that, and I just am like, to me, it speaks for itself, but it won't, and people don't speak up for it. So, like, I haven't really brought this up anywhere before, but it's true, and it's something you can even look up. It's verifiable. We, Pepper Coyote and Chris the Comedy Bunny, we out fundraised Majira. That is insane to me. And like, that's why I think it was 2021. And I was kind of proud of that because we worked really hard and we put on a great show and we engaged the audience and we did everything we came there to do. And we were not just coasting on who we were to get people to come. People came because they wanted to see live music. They wanted to see, like one of those trademark 18 plus charity panels.
Sure. Well, but the second stage at BLFC is more accessible.
Yeah, it gets more through traffic, which is why I said
gets much more through traffic. I mean, if I was a musician, I'd rather be there than on the main stage, because the main stage, you got to go back in the back area and all the way over there. And it's like, and if I'm walking there and there's a concert going on right here, when I first walk in, it's like, I'll just stay here because, hey, so that's just me. But you've made a criticism video and you're making a second criticism video about these 2 cons. Do you feel that places a target on you? Oh
yeah, I think that I've felt the target on my back from the very first time I opened my mouth to give a convention criticism, all the way back in 2019 at Vancouver. I had staffed for years. And I had brought back an event that was no longer running, which was a Floor Wars event, which is a staple across a lot of larger cons in the States, especially, but in Canada, not so much. But I decided to bring it back, and I did it a little bit of a different way because I had also at that point never done an American Floor Wars or seen one. So I kind of just did it off of my own interpretation of what the event was.
Right.
And it was fun. It was pretty good, in my opinion. And then the next year, I would go in to submit it again, and the con told me, they're like, we're letting someone else run it this year. And I was kind of like, okay, well, I mean, I guess that's fine. I brought it back, but if someone else thinks they can do it better, then, more power to them. Good for them. But when I went and experienced Vancouver 2019, which is in Vancouver in British Columbia, I noticed that all of the big events were now being run by people from Edmonton, which is in the next province over. It's the next big city. It's a 15-hour drive from Vancouver.
Oh, good grief.
But it's the next big city
Wow.
east of Vancouver. And again, nothing bad about those people, nothing bad about Edmonton, but they have a con, and it's called FurA, and it's a good con, and those people all run those events there. But then Vancouver brought them to run the events at Vancouver, and so I was like, and I actually even had my dance comp that I also run taken from me, and so I was kind of like, okay, I don't like that. So I went to the Hiss and Scritch, 2019, March, Vancouver. I say, how come you guys actively turned down locals to run the events here, and you'd like let every major event here get run by people from Edmonton? It's not an indictment against anyone from there or whatever, but if you have a convention in Chicago, for example, are you going to let every big event be run by people from Milwaukee? Like, I think you might get people saying things about that. So when I spoke up, and I just said that, I just said, like, you turned locals down to run these same events. And then I got called racist because I made a comment about people from another province.
Oh,
I know.
God.
This is how any kind of criticism can be just immediately just gone, is because they will just boil it down into like, oh, you talk too much, you're a diva, you're bossy, you're whatever. And it's like these Alberta is like our Texas. Like, imagine saying something like that. It's so stupid. But people thought that, and people thought that for over a year about me. They're like, oh, what do you have a problem with Edmonton, Alberta? And I'm like, I don't. I love the con. But they took over the events at Vancouver, which, if you have people willing to run the events that are local, give them a shot or let them improve, give them advice instead of just unceremoniously telling them, sorry, we've handed your event over to someone else this year.
Do you think maybe they did that because they didn't have the staff to run it, and they thought, hey, we'll just call those guys over and let them run everything?
Well, I would believe
resistance.
That if I hadn't, like I said, submitted the event and been told that they gave it to somebody else to run. So, just a little bit of disrespect. But I love Vancouver. I changed my like to love. It's my local con. It's my obligation con. It was my first con, and I've staffed it. It was the first con I staffed. And so even from that moment, in a public space at the con Hiss and Scritch, where you give commentary to the board, I got criticized right then and there for it, for even just saying that. So,
well, yeah, I've been to a couple of Hiss and Scritches and Hiss and Purrs and stuff like that, and I find, and I don't go to them anymore because the board doesn't like to take criticism. I've never been to a Hiss and Scritch where the board says, oh, yeah, we totally messed that up. We are working on it for next year. We apologize. They're like, well, what do you mean? Why?
You get a passive-aggressive, thank you for your feedback.
Right? Yes.
That's all you get.
Who's next? Yeah.
So that's why I also mention in my videos, because this is still a larger, still talking about the question, why make criticism videos?
Right.
Because I've noticed, that cons don't seek out feedback much anymore, and it seems to be getting less and less, whether it's feedback forms being sent out, whether it's the Hiss and Scritch panel where you actually have to go in person. Vancouver now, they still have their Hiss and Scritch, but they've figured out that if they schedule my Survivor panel to be the same time, that I won't show up.
You won't go up, yeah. Yeah, it's like FC. They have their Hiss and Scritch at like 4:00 on the Monday afternoon after the con is over.
It's like, I'm already in Vancouver at that point.
Right? Yeah. So it's like, okay.
Not that I have much bad to say about FC, because FC is the best con in the States.
I like FC. Opinion. Yeah, it was my very first con, so it's kind of my
first American con.
Yeah. So,
and you know what? I circle back around to one of your slightly earlier questions regarding the professionalism.
Right.
FC is a con, and one of the few cons left that started in the 90s. We have not many of those left. I think it's FC, AC, Megaplex. That might be it. Like, there's not a lot, right? So those are cons that have the longest history, the most staff in the back burner, all these people that help make the con last for 20 plus years. But those are none of those were the first cons to hit 5 figures in attendance. The first cons to hit 5 figures were MFF and then FWA. And those cons are both like, 10-ish years old, I think. They are not
Right.
from the 90s.
Yeah.
So when we say like, where can the board go? Where do volunteers go? If it was in the hands of people with more experience, I think we might have had a different outcome. But with the way things are happening right now, I think that there's just too many people at some of those lesser experienced events. Not that they're inexperienced,
Right.
but that they might not know how to grow properly, like you kind of mentioned.
Well, sure. I mean, and that's, I know that there are tons of factors for how big
Yeah.
your con can get. You can't get any bigger than your space allows. So you can't, FC is capped. There is no way they can get any bigger unless they move someplace else. There's just no way they can get any bigger.
And BLFC is about to be there too.
Yes. Well, BLFC has a problem with moving their dates around all the time. And that just really irks a lot of folks. And as folks know, the BLFC that's coming up for 2023 is going to be in, was it November?
No, it's Halloween week.
Halloween week. Okay. So it's going to compete with Halloween. Plus, it's a weekday con. It starts Monday and ends Friday. And a lot of folks are like, well, we can't do. And I know the reason is because of the hotel contracts and all that stuff. And that's just, and it's a big casino. It's a destination casino. They don't make a lot of money on FurCon. So they would like events to be there that are going to bring money to the gambling table and help build more things. Furries don't do a lot of gambling. I mean, there are people there that gamble. There are furs that gamble, but not a lot of them. Most of them are doing their other stuff, hanging out with friends.
Yeah.
Causing pizzas to be problematic. But
oh God.
But so I kind of answered my question. Do you think that a con can get too big?
I think that there is a line or a threshold where it just becomes too much. I think saying a con is too big is subjective because, you know, a lot of the fandom is kind of socially awkward, doesn't like big crowds already from the get-go. And now you're telling them, like, when people tell me their first con is MFF, I'm like, you're going to start with the 13th. You're going to go right in the deep end, 13K, right off the bat.
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, I go ahead, I guess. If it's your first con, go have fun. But like, that's a bit much. I got
my pilot's license. I'm going to fly a 747. No.
You can fly a prop plane.
Yes.
But I often think back to another thing from the 2010s, the Facebook friend phenomenon, where, you know, you had these like snooty articles coming out from like science magazines where they're like, actually, the human brain can only process 250 friendships at a time. So if you have 1,000 friends on Facebook, then chances are you're not really friends with all those people. You know, do you remember that?
I remember that. I always remember the one line is like, how many friends do you have on Facebook? I have 15,000. Great. If you were moving this weekend, how many would help you?
Oh, that's good too. And I think that that's how I feel when I go to so many cons in a year, because people come up to me and they're like, oh, do you remember me? I'm like, no. Like, whether it's in suit or out of suit, I always look for people's badges to try and remember names, because faces can be really hard in a crowd of 10,000 people.
Right.
So I think there is a line where, you know, attendance goes up and the meaningful amount of time you can spend per person goes down. And I'm not a statistician or a scientist, but that certainly does exist, I think, where the amount of meaningful time you can spend in a certain spot or with a person with a rising number of attendees just doesn't really become worth it anymore. And maybe it's better to go to smaller cons where you can spend more meaningful time with people and have more breaks to yourself instead of just being like, go, 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 go all weekend. Which is really how it can feel at some of those huge events.
Oh, yeah, I know. When I go to BLFC, it feels like I'm just running forever.
Place to place, yeah.
From place to place and thing to thing and stuff going on. And I try to schedule time. I try to schedule downtime for myself and for Taebyn, because he will go 1,000 miles an hour for 20 hours a day if I don't pull him by the tail.
That
and
boundless puppy energy, I know.
I know. I was like,
So when you say about like why make the criticism video, because I know we keep losing. Well,
that's okay. That's the trademark of our show, is we kind of just go around stuff, and we're just focusing on you, so we can go wherever we want.
And I love the discussion, because you're a smart guy, Barely, and I definitely appreciate that you know so much too. Like you said, like managed a nonprofit and all this stuff, so you actually know more. Maybe not directly behind the scenes of the biggest cons on the planet, but you know about the systems that help them run.
Right.
And that is more than enough. And so when I talk about why criticism video, well, what am I criticizing? The way staff handles performers, events, musicians. Okay. So am I criticizing the whole con? No.
No.
Am I criticizing the chair? No.
No.
But even when you say like BLFC moving dates, that's something that attendees have no clue about how hotel contract negotiation stuff work. Or when you mentioned the alcohol, right?
Right.
Attendees don't know that, for example, Texas Furry Fiesta has their dessert, or no, Megaplex has their dessert social. It's a room full of free dessert. That's a part of the hotel contract.
Right.
That's something that's agreed to. It's not just a freebie that the hotel gives the con.
Yeah.
Everything is factored like that. So when I make my videos, I've said the point where I say, you know, attendees are on my side, quote unquote, because this is what attendees see. Attendees see panels. Attendees see what the con wants them to see, right? So then when the con is saying no to certain people, but yes to others, and giving them that, like, here we go again, that main stage spot, you can't help but ask why. And then you see the name, my favorite example, the singing furry, the one act on the main stage. You know, barely, fun fact, the singing furry, and I'm kind of purposely not saying their name because it's so stupid that it's like, you know, but they're the only person who performed on main stage at BLFC 2021, 2022, and at MFF 2021 and 2022. And at those cons, they were the only person to perform on main stage. So when I say, you know, look at who's on main stage or look at who they're letting perform, and it's one person with no catalog.
Right.
Why is it a bad thing to ask? But it's because I ask where people think, oh, you just want to perform instead. Instead? You said instead. Why not both? Why not everyone?
Right.
These are huge cons with multiple stages, which we already went over. BLFC, MFF, whatever. They could do it. They could set aside a stage to just be performances all weekend. TFF does it.
Right.
Though this year, for the first time, they also had 2 stages for performances, a main and a second. And guess who got on main?
Did you get on main?
No, I wasn't at TFF this year because it was the same weekend as Frontal Equinox. This was my first
singing
year.
Furry?
Yes, you better believe it was the singing furry.
Singing furry. Hey!
I'm sure they rocked the house with their 18th cover of Rocket Man. That certainly doesn't make it like really, like, I get it, but also stop.
Right.
Or maybe not stop. But that's really what the criticism is. If you can't even ask questions about who got their panel approved and why did they choose this person? And the con looks at you like, shut up. Then there's a problem. Dissent is not appreciated in this fandom. Opinions are not welcome. You should just be happy with what the con decides and shut up. That's how people see me.
Well, we're going to talk about that. So I'm going to jump right into that. So how do you respond to critics who think you're difficult to work with now?
I think that I've always had a perception that I've been difficult to work with. Like most musicians, if we're being honest, because I, for the longest time, kind of thought that I was extremely low maintenance. And I kind of took pride in that because I'm really, at the end of the day, when I'm performing at these cons, I am either in suit or I'm not in fursuit, and I'm singing. I'm not bringing live instruments. I don't have a band. I have a thumb drive full of pop song instrumentals that are my original songs. And as long as I can play off a thumb drive or off a aux cable going into my phone or whatever, as long as I can do that and I have a mic, I'm okay.
Yeah.
So I really did think that I was like that kind of low maintenance before. And so the people or critics who say that I'm difficult to work with, I think that, as mentioned earlier, the fandom has a lot of people that are socially awkward, that don't like confrontation. Just there's a lot of passiveness in the fandom, right? You're not supposed to stand up and ask for something. You're supposed to wait your turn. You need to just don't speak out of turn.
Just
right?
chill out. Just relax.
Yeah.
We'll get
but
to
if you ask for something, whether it's, hey, can I perform? Or do you have a thing for me to plug this USB into? It's immediately like, Okay, so you're demanding. Okay, you didn't come prepared.
Okay.
Do
Yeah.
you see, like, and so
Yeah.
I also work in politics. So when you see, how do you respond to critics that say that you're difficult to work with? It's a very powerful thing to turn a person into a single word.
Mhm.
If you can turn an entire person's lived experience, their art, and their perceptions and opinions and perspectives, and just boil it all down into just saying, Cassidy, they're difficult. They're a diva. They complain too much.
Mhm.
You have taken away the humanity from the person. You've taken away the nuance. You've taken away perhaps what they were fighting for to begin with, to assert your own opinion. What is Cassidy? Who is Cassidy? Well, they're difficult.
Mhm.
You know, you don't want to work with Cassidy. Well, why not? She complains about what? Not having equipment to perform. Okay, whose fault is that? Hers.
Right.
No one takes responsibility. I am the first person that's really willing to speak up like this, and that's why I'm getting all this attention / hate, because the
Right.
fandom really has never had someone like me before. As weird as that is to say, because I really didn't want this to be what I ended up kind of being known for, and I still don't. I only started making YouTube videos on my channel because I wanted to meet the threshold to monetize the channel, because I wanted eventually to make music videos that I could then upload
Mhm.
and monetize out the gate, because I want to make animated music videos, and those are big investments.
Mhm.
But you can't just monetize out the gate anymore, your channel. So I was like, okay, I'll start
Right.
with like some kind of typical furry videos, explaining my persona, talking
Right.
about
Yeah.
this or that, whatever. But it's only when, and it was fine during COVID, I could make my videos, throw them out there, they get 200 views, whatever. We're not in 2014 YouTube anymore. I get it. It's a different game now.
Right.
I don't really like TikTok, so I haven't tried to play that game too much, but
Yeah.
the cons are not great at the social media game either, really, like outside of Twitter. So people try to warn me. They're like, cons talk, don't you know? Cons talk. Yeah, and cons also
Yeah,
lie.
they do. It's well, I mean, they're people. The
Yeah.
con doesn't talk. The
Yeah,
people
exactly.
that run the con talk, and the people that attend the con talk.
And I
The con
mentioned
itself is mute.
yes, I mentioned even my MFF video. I brought up Iggy, who is a pretty big figure in the Midwest furry scene as well.
Okay.
They're a dinosaur, and they were Guest of Honor at MCFC this year, the one I was at.
Mhm.
They came up in my MFF video last year because they had been running panels at MFF since 2011, and then last year they had them all rejected for seemingly no reason. So Iggy reached out and got an email back, and guess what? By sheer happenstance, the con staff person that they were talking to goofed up and accidentally forwarded them the actual con like communications
Mhm.
about them, about
Mhm.
Iggy. And guess
Okay.
what they were saying? Iggy is demanding. Iggy is being rude to our staff. Iggy is this and that. And Iggy made this all into a thread on Twitter. They made a video on MFF even before I did. And they still
Okay.
got to be Guest of Honor at MCFC.
Hmm.
Because, I don't know what could be different between me and Iggy. I think that's probably something most people in this fandom could figure out, but I don't know. So when cons talk, oh, be careful, cons talk. Cons lie. People lie. And we have proof. We don't know what gets said behind every closed door in every meeting. Look at Fernal Equinox. When
Right.
the con staff said that I threatened them, and then the board staff met in private to discuss ways to punish me for a thing that they had no proof of. They can just make up stuff because
Right.
no one is there to push back against it. So when cons talk, it
Yeah.
just sounds like they're chatting it up in the echo chamber. People wait until the cameras are off and no one's paying attention to lie.
Oh, sure.
If they can
Yeah.
get away with smearing someone that's not around to defend themselves, you better believe they will. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
I will be saying this, like almost this exact line in the IFC video, where all it takes is a few like-minded haters that are high up in leadership to just decide to blacklist you.
Sure.
Iggy said in his Twitter thread that he felt blacklisted because he went from 11 years of panels to no panels at MFF, and then accidentally getting an email where the staff were dumping on him. So it's
Yeah.
like, at what point does someone take responsibility for this stuff?
Well, one of the things that I thought was odd, and I've chatted with some folks on boards and things like that, is like where there's a fine line as a chairman or a board member that has a lot of power
Mhm.
to be, for lack of a better term, fraternizing with the minions.
Mm.
Because if you're the chairman and you go to a room party
Mm.
and something happens,
Uh-oh.
then where is your liability?
Yeah.
Why was the con chairman in this situation when he or she shouldn't have been? And so they have to, I think when you become a board member of a large con, you have to disassociate yourself from the attendees.
Mhm.
I mean, you can interact in a public setting and whatnot, but those private parties probably don't want to go to. Just saying.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
If you're going to be
But-
in charge, you need to keep some level of subjectivity or just
Sure.
distance without getting too into the weeds, right? Because you're supposed to be the top of the
Right.
pyramid.
3 pints of whiskey and you're talking badness about people, and then people that's not
Yep.
drunk are like, hey, so
They'll
and so
remember
said
that.
so and so is, yeah. So, so let's take another spin at what can be done to make things better in the future.
Well, I will kind of tie this into the question about the video. So, like, going forward, what can be done? I think that cons need to just embrace feedback, whether it's positive or negative. And negative doesn't mean someone is holding up a sign saying furries are abominations outside of the con. That's not feedback. That's nothing. But when
No, that's
someone
Florida.
well, I mean, it was at MFF last year too. But,
Oh, yeah.
but when cons actively treat people that are public figures, and it's weird to call myself a public figure, but I've become one as a result of my willingness to put myself out there and my eagerness to kind of engage with the fandom in so many different places and so many different communities. When they treat someone like me like that, I'm not someone who's going to stay quiet. And
Right.
now that I've realized just how important it is to speak up for myself, I feel like I have to do it now more than ever. I never needed to do this before, but now that there's actually pushback against what? Making spaces for musicians? Like, really? That's what started this all? Do you guys even know that the bronies figured out how to treat their musicians like right out the gate? They had the brony cons and their musicians fill their main stage every day of the weekends of brony cons. They had this figured out from the get-go. I really don't understand why we struggle so much at it. To me, it's not acceptable. And
Right.
And like, yeah, maybe that's strong language. Like, oh, what do you like? You're expecting too much from a FurCon. Oh, so the bronies did it better? Is that what you want to hear? Like, I don't get it. Like, how come no one is willing to improve? And we act like these big cons can't do anything. Like, oh, poor MFF. They only have a whole convention center.
Right.
And I get it. There's only so much staff, and no one wants to be working AV for 12 hours straight. But that's why once you actually start to create the spaces, people will come.
Right.
That's it. There is a demand. There is a desire for this. But because the fandom and the large events where I have these issues have not made themselves willing to create these spaces, people don't come. People don't volunteer.
Yeah.
But maybe if they were like, hey, we're doing a whole 12 hours of concerts from 12 noon till midnight on this stage, and we're looking for AV crew volunteers, I have a feeling they would get a lot.
Yeah.
But they've never tried.
Well, and that's it. It's a matter of rethinking how you do your business.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I asked the last time at FC when I was there was, why don't you have a rehearsal stage? Use your main stage for stuff going on, because they'll tie up the main stage all day to rehearse for the talent show. It's like, why aren't you in like a big panel room where you can rehearse, and then you bring it out to the main stage? Why are you tying up a venue that you paid a shit ton of money for, and you're not using it to its fullest potential?
Yeah.
So
I think that has to do with the lack of like actual communication between departments and staff at these cons. The staff want to take credit for things when they succeed, but then they're nowhere to be found when things don't go well or when there's criticism to be made. And you're right, is that there are these spaces that are being underutilized by cons that are already within their purview of the contract of the hotel space that they're in.
Yeah.
But they're just
Use
not maximized, I guess would be the word.
And the other criticism I've had about a lot of cons, because I put in for panels for Taebyn and I, and the panel, the form is, what's your panel? How long is it going to last? And what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, great. How about asking me what equipment I need,
Uh-huh.
whether I need spotlights, whether I need a microphone, whether I'd like the table set up, whether I'd like chairs set up, how it, all those things, which, by the way, get out the float. That's what the application looks like. It's got all those questions on it.
Yep.
Because I was like, these are the things I need to know as a programming director. Do you need a microphone? Do you need 2 microphones? Do you need an AV person there to help you out?
Yeah.
What do you need?
It's incredible how just asking for even asking for that sort of bare minimum in a panel submission form is just too much for some of these events. Because they criticized me at Fernal Equinox. They're like, did you fill out a rider? No one had even contacted me. So I filled out what my panel submission said, and it said it was a concert, and y'all told me it was an AV capable room, but then I got there, and guess what? It wasn't an AV capable room. So who is doing the lying here?
Right.
Who is the one with the shortcomings? Is it me, or is it the communication breakdown that seems to happen across every single con?
Mm-hmm. So if you were in charge of the main stage at a con, let's say you're in charge of the main stage at BLFC.
Sure.
How are you going to make it change? How are you going to make it different? How are you going to make it better?
Well, you mentioned BLFC specifically, and I do agree with what you'd said earlier, that it is not as ideal as second stage for those sorts of things. So I almost, if I was to be in charge of that event, I almost wouldn't put any musicians on main stage. I would keep it DJs, dance comp. I mean, hell, maybe MFF talent show could get moved to the main stage, because that has been on third stage. Confusing MFF and BLFC now, but BLFC doesn't have a talent show. MFF does, and it's not on the main stage. Theirs is on second stage, but BLFC does not have a talent show, but they've got a main stage. So that could be an idea. Main stage at BLFC, DJs at night, dance comp on Sunday, Floor Wars. I think that happens there too.
Yep.
Talent show, and that's pretty solid of an event lineup. And then you have all weekend to fill on second stage with as many musicians as you could possibly want. And they don't need the fancy lights that main stage gets for the dances.
No.
Right? Yeah. You think that the band needs the strobes? Probably not.
Probably not.
But that's really all the thinking that's required. But whether or not you agree or disagree with my comments on the singing furry, for example, fact is, if you were to watch the concert that they put on at BLFC on the main stage, they're just a person alone, standing on the huge stage with nothing, gripping the mic stand for dear life as they belt out their 8th Elton John cover.
Okay. Yeah.
So even then, as a musician, it is scary too, right? I'm just a singer. I'm just a one-person performer, and being on a big stage by myself, I can run around and I perform in suit. I am able to do that, but I know not everybody can. And that's why it's more about being on an even playing field is really the point that matters the most to me. If we start drawing lines about who gets main stage, who gets second stage, who gets a panel room, then you get questions. The follow-up is, okay, well, why was this person put in this place? And then that question's immediately met with, okay, no, stop it. You're causing drama. But am I, though?
I'm just asking questions. I'm just trying to get figured out.
And not in a Tucker Carlson way either. It's
yeah, exactly.
I'm just curious why the most followed and streamed furry musician doesn't get the time of day, but Elton John covers streamed live on Twitch gets main stage at all the biggest cons. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Actually, I do get it, but
Yeah. So do you think maybe you should take a step back and start doing smaller cons and then kind of increase your, I don't know, your fan power, if you will. And then, you can say, oh yeah, hey, I'm a draw. I'll bring another 4,000 followers to this con if I perform, just by starting out. I don't know, to me, I mean, I met you several years ago. You kind of just exploded on the scene. I mean, you were there, and then you were doing concerts, And, you know, my
It was
question was,
all
well,
work.
I just like, where'd this person come from?
Yeah.
I'm just throwing things out there.
No, you're right. And that's what I kind of got at before, is that I'm kind of done with MFF and BLFC, at least for now. I went to Gateway Fur Meet in St. Louis, Missouri in March this year. And it was awesome. I had a wicked concert there. Granted, the theater was so hot, I couldn't wear my suit because I was sweating a lot. But, and I was like moving around on stage and I could feel where the hot spots were. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, geez.
But I still did the whole hour. I did the whole hour. And then I did Survivor, which was like a very minor part of the IFC stuff, because someone was like, good, you removed Cassidy as guest of honor from IFC because her panel at Gateway Fur Meet ran 45 minutes too long. Good thing you removed her. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize to you because it affected you and I tried to help, but if you're going to try and use that to dunk on me as a reason, then it's like, okay. But Gateway Fur Meet, 700 people. I'm considering going to Forever West in Laramie, Wyoming. That has 50 people. I really don't care. I want to see more of the US. I want to see what the incredible diversity within the fandom itself, not just the people who can afford to fly to Chicago or to Reno, Nevada, which is not a hub like Chicago is.
Right. So come to Get Out the Float. I'll give you our main stage for Get Out the Float.
I'll do it. I'd love to go to Oregon again. Yeah. So like what you said, build up that fan power, or however you'd put it, a following, I guess.
Fan following. Yeah.
Is that I really didn't ever want to play that game. I don't want to be a social media influencer. I don't want to be a YouTube personality. And I say this in my IFC video too, right? I mentioned it earlier in the podcast. I know musicians with like 10 albums out with no desire to be a VTuber or whatever, right? But they deserve the time of day and they deserve a chance too. Because if we're going to start deciding on how people get the spots that they get, what matters more? Output into the fandom or some big number that doesn't mean anything. Right. I have 33,000 followers on TikTok. Yeah. But I haven't posted on there in over 2 years. So it's like, what numbers matter? Are these real people? Are they just the things that keep you on the app? Sure. Keep you streaming every day, whatever it is.
Did someone find you at a click farm and all of a sudden you've got...
Yeah.
There you go.
And I think that some people doubt the reception of my videos too. Like I know the MFF video, like how was it received? Because some people on the con like staff side of things certainly were not big on it. I had heard that, you know, it was the talk of the town back in December last year when it came out, because I released it on the first day of MFF. That was very much a deliberate decision. Okay. And they were talking about it all weekend, and I had people, because, you know, I've got ears everywhere. Civets have great hearing. And I had people telling me that within these con leadership chats that I was apparently being pre-banned from some furry events because of my video, and not MFF, but other events. So just imagine the absurdity of that for a second, where someone is trying to presumably kiss up to whoever is running MFF so much that I, with my criticism, hey, what if we treated musicians better? They think they can get, you know, in their good graces by pre-banning me from an event that wouldn't it be funny if I just never ended up going to, just organically. Like how empty of a gesture is that? I mean, it's a very, I say that in the Flera article too, right? Like how typical of a furry thing to do something performative and ultimately meaningless, right? Right. It's like the definition of a virtue signal, I guess would be another way to put it, where it literally doesn't mean anything. It's not an action. It's just nothing. So, but if you look at the comments on the MFF video I made, they're positive and people agree. You look at the like to dislike ratio. I know you can't see dislikes anymore on YouTube, but I can, and I can tell you it's still positive because people agree. I am not speaking for staff. I am speaking as an attendee, as an outsider, as a performer, as someone who wants to be involved. And if I'm being met with the big, you know, closed door, walls up, whatever, and I'm like, well, I'm going to talk about my experience being shut out from this thing, and then the people who shut me out get upset, it kind of sounds like I don't care what they have to say. Right. It kind of sounds like if they don't like fix themselves and do reflection, I mean, it's not meant to be a threat, but it's only going to get worse for them. Because if this is how
Well,
dissent is
yeah.
treated, and I
Mhm.
am the first person to speak out like this, what does that say about everyone else who's been rejected in the past?
Right. Well, now you touched on something earlier in the show about how the fandom as a whole, for the most part, is very marginalized individuals. And
Yeah.
like you said, they're autistic, they're not comfortable around crowds, but these are the people that are rising to the surface to
Hmm.
run these cons.
Yeah.
I mean, they still have the same issues.
There's a lot of people in the fandom who are neurodivergent.
Yes, there you go. Nice word. Thank you very much. We actually talked about that on my Puppy Kink podcast. Um,
Everything's related.
Everything's related. It all comes together. We have talked for over an hour, Cassidy.
Yes.
So I think we come to the natural conclusion, unless you have anything else you'd like to
I thought you were
get
going to
off your
ask
chest.
another question about, or you were leading to something with the neurodivergent stuff.
No, just the fact that those are the same people that are now running the cons. And so I think part of the issue might be that they're just not equipped to deal with criticism.
Yeah.
And so they shut it down. People criticize me all the time, and I'm like, okay, tell me how I can make it better. What did I do wrong? I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to insult you.
Most people aren't like that, and that's just
true.
the truth.
That's the truth. Yeah.
Everyone's got their own life experience, their own lived experience. They've got their own friends and everything. And I know what you mean. There's a lot of neurodivergent people in the fandom. It's definitely higher than the general population. And they do end up becoming the people who become board members or run events, because when you have that kind of a brain, sometimes you're really good at a specific thing. And then you just like zone in on it. And so when I talk about my lived experience, I say that one of my best friends from when I literally went to my first convention was a guy named Trappa, who was on the Rain board, who helped start Rainforest, Califur, Vancouver, Fur a lot of cons out on like the west coast of North America, really.
Right.
And Trappa is a Civet as well. And that's kind of why we have a kinship there, Civetship, if you will. But Trappa is one of those kinds of people. I don't know if they're explicitly neurodivergent in a specific area, but they're honed in their field, and they kind of validated some of my speaking out early on, because they experienced that too, because they were the critical voice typically on any board that they were on, and they were met with the same sort of treatment, because it doesn't matter apparently what con it is, or even if you're on the board itself. But there are times where, the person speaks up and you think, oh, no one wants to hear this. But it needs to be said.
Exactly.
So do you punish those people? There's the expression, squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? But it seems more in this fandom that the squeaky wheel gets replaced and removed. And so when people tell me, Cassidy, do you ever think that you're the problem? Do you ever think that you're the problem and maybe you need to fix yourself? I'm like, yeah, I know I'm the problem. I'm the one who's speaking. That's why I have the target. Like, hello, you're not pointing out anything new. You're not addressing what I'm bringing up either. You're saying that I'm the problem because I am talking. But you don't care what I'm talking about. You don't care that like 30 musicians got rejected from MFF last year. And the same one person got to play main stage. And then the same other group, trio, Menagerie, still got to do 2-3 concerts. Those are the only acts allowed. No one else. Why? And why does it make me a villain for pointing that out?
Question.
I talk a lot about the ever-evolving state of the fandom right now. We're in a new area we've never been in before. I think the internet has kind of exasperated these issues. We've become a society of almost like block on sight sort of opinion age. It's kind of hard for me to even put it into words, because it's such a unique feeling that you get when you're on social media or one of these places where conflict and difference of opinion can happen, but it's equally as possible that you just can block it all out, and then you're just permanently stuck in your own little bubble. And everyone's got their own bubble. I've got a bubble. You've got a bubble. Everyone listening to this has a place they feel comfortable.
Yes, I'm not belittling any board. I'm not belittling any con. I know how difficult it is to run a big event.
Yeah.
I know how much it costs. I know how much work it takes on the back end. And if you're not getting compensated, that's a lot of free labor that you're doing for these cons.
Yeah.
There's room for improvement, obviously. And I think, like you said, when the world came to an end, everybody just kind of stopped thinking.
hmm
and now they're coming back and they're having to rethink how they do things, and they're trying to do things the old ways, and the old ways don't work anymore. And
Yeah.
the other thing is too, you can't be an outspoken person fursuiter outside of the fandom and have it not affect you in the fandom.
Yes.
I mean, you can't have an opinion about something, because if it's just not, rainbows and kittens, you're a troublemaker.
Yeah.
So
I don't want to bring up too much unrelated drama,
right.
but I will say that in regards to the pushback that I have gotten, or even that, say, Pepper Coyote got those years ago, no one committed any crimes. No laws were broken. I don't want to pull an American card and be like, free speech, but boy, the fandom sure seems to hate free speech, doesn't it? Like, there's just a level, and no one's saying anything hateful or hurtful. It's just like, hey, what if we did this differently? And it's like blasphemy.
Right.
Zip it right now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I can guarantee you that this episode of this podcast is going to be criticized when people start hearing it. And
yeah,
there's going to be some feedback, but I welcome it, because the only way to get better is to talk about the tough issues. If you don't talk about the tough issues, they continue. And
I don't want to live in a block on-site society. I work in politics, and I do believe that discussion and discourse is healthy. Unhealthy discourse, don't confuse that with something that's toxic. What's happening in the States about LGBT issues, that's not discourse. That's hate.
That's hate.
Can we learn the difference? Words have meanings. I keep saying this. Someone on Twitter the other day was like, are you playing semantics about your tweet? Yes, I'm playing semantics, because all we have here are the words that we use. And if you can't even read what I said without either filling in the gaps in your brain and adding things, then what can be done? There was a person who, because of, the Megaplex stuff, where they're like, are you saying that Megaplex and all the queer people in Florida need to move? No, I never said that. And so I just blocked that person on site, because I'm like, you're too stupid to read what I wrote. So you're not even worth talking to, because you're just making up stuff.
Yes. And that's just it. People they just react and just spew stuff without any truth,
what's that
backing,
picture
or knowledge.
On Twitter? It's like, you tweet, I love pancakes, and someone will be like, why do you hate waffles? What do you have against waffles?
Exactly.
It's like, dude, shut
up. What about oranges? What about why don't you like oranges too? Oranges are good for breakfast. Like,
what do you have against apples?
Yeah. No, dude, no. Stop.
And you know what? For anyone that actually is engaging with the podcast and listened this far, I'll say again, because it might need to be said this directly, I love conventions. I love con staff. I absolutely have the most respect for the people that start and help these events happen, for every volunteer, for all the staff that actually are involved in making the event a success. They're incredible people. And my friend Trappa that I mentioned, he started and ran so many events that was the angle I came into the fandom from. I came in with a great deal of respect for these people. And as I've traveled around, I said this in my comment, and I'll say this again in the video, it just, the reality of the fandom started to settle in for me. It wasn't 2019 anymore, where it seemed like you could just perform and have a hand extended out, but the doors are closed now. The doors are closing. And, why do I have to constantly compare furry to brony?
Right.
Why do I have to sound like such
common.
a jabroni?
You're like the third person that's brought up the fact that the bronies have it dialed in, man.
I don't get it. I really don't.
Now they just need to work on their hygiene. That's
when the bronies join the furry fandom, they're not sending their best.
No. Jeez.
That's some more pre-COVID humor, I guess.
Right.
Really, that's how I feel. I'm only optimistic, and I say this at the end of my IFC video. I am just a furry who wants to make art and see the fandom become the best it can be. It's not about putting myself on main stage and only me. It's about, what if there was a stage for all musicians to perform on all weekend? Why is that hard for the big cons with multiple stages to even conceive of? No one has done it outside of TFF. Nobody.
Because it's hard.
It is hard.
It's hard to do. It's an organizational nightmare. I can tell you that from like get-go. When you've got that, it's just an organizational nightmare, especially if you've got different performers that need different. And then the other thing that's kind of out there is, there is setup time and teardown time.
Yep.
You can't just put people back to back in a con room or a panel room or on a stage. You can't do it.
I would hope it's not being thrown together last minute. This should all be factored into the lineup, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
You want a very minor, silly, little tangential thing from me.
Of course.
FC 2019 was my very first time doing American Con talent show. The video of my performance is online. Please look it up. I loved the video. It's great. It's a great performance. I'm very proud of it. But I went there having been watching Eurovision since 2014. So I had no concept of what was going to be there. So I almost went into American cons not expecting the crazy stagings of Eurovision, but kind of expecting a bit more of like cohesion, I guess, amongst the music. And and I'd never done any BronyCons either. I've done one in my life, and it was in 2022, and it's just because it was run all by furries, and it's local. Yeah, that was the only reason I did it. But at this point, I'm thinking, well, hell, maybe I should think about doing some BronyCons for a year. You want to talk about doing small fur cons? Maybe I'll spend 2024 doing only BronyCons.
There you go.
Yeah. I have no idea, really, but
you heard it here first, folks. He's going to do. Go to the. You want to hear Cassidy Civet? Go to a BronyCon.
Hey, well, the BronyCon does not exist anymore. There's many others. I don't know. I really don't know what the future holds for me. I don't know if you want to do like a...
Sure. What does the future hold for you? What does the future hold for you, Cassidy Civet? No one knows.
Well, the thing is, with how I have approached my life, I guess, since COVID, is that I understand now more than ever that it's really just a day by day kind of thing. But it's also, you need to look ahead and build each day towards something. You can't always just wait for the opportunities to come to you. I didn't. Like the Canada's Got Talent thing that was sprung on me literally the day before the auditions closed. I got in suit that night, made a video, and they called me the next day. Wow. These things happen if you put yourself out there, if you're just willing to try. And you want to, the crazy, like still in this tangent, but the snowball of it all. Because FC 2019, I perform in my very first talent show. I don't place, but I get approached to perform at TFF. So I bust my absolute ass off for the rest of 2019. I get my first and only fursuit in July of 2019. I release and work my butt off on my album, and it comes out February 2020, right before COVID. And then I get approached by someone else, this time furry game developer Clace, who's famous for his games Major Minor and Winds of Change. Winds of Change is on the Switch, the Nintendo Switch. And he approached me. He messaged me. He's like, hey, you write furry pop music? I would like to work with you because I've worked with Pepper Coyote. I've worked with Nice the Singing Dog. I've worked with Foxamore, and they're all great. But you are way poppier than any of them. So I'd like to work with you now. And I'm like, wow.
Nice.
Like, that's such a list of names to be in the conversation with.
Right.
And at that point, in early 2020, when I was approached, I had not really met any of those people.
Oh, and you're like, who are those? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I knew of them and certainly knew their impacts in the fandom, but to have someone approached me who was like respected and is a developer being like, hey, I believe that you are talented in your field and I want to work with you. I was incredibly flattered. And now it's 2023 and we've made it through COVID with the big air quotes. And I'm looking
knock on wood.
Yeah. I mean, my desk is wood.
Yeah, there you go.
But we're looking at 2023 right now. I auditioned for Eurovision for the second time in January this year. Once again, did not make it through the auditions, but
Oh, well.
San Marino ultimately went to the contest and got a nice result of 0 points. So literally
Nice.
they could not have done worse. So maybe they'll learn a lesson. I don't know. But so that happened. I spent 40 days in Europe. I did 4 FurCons in March and 2 in January.
Wow.
Then I got home in April, got my butt booted up from IFC, and now it's May. I'm busting my butt again to finish my second album, which will be out in August 4th. And the first single from the furry soundtrack for the upcoming Nintendo Switch game that Clace is working on just premiered like a week ago. It's called Stay the Night. And the album comes out in July.
Wow.
So
you're a busy fur.
So this is what I mean is, yeah, IFC and this petty drama stuff that happens on Twitter, it really only matters to people who care about Twitter. And after Twitter got bought, I thought there were a lot of people that said they were going to leave, but weird, they seem to still be here. So it's just, it's a fandom and like this terminally online fandom full of hypocrites that can't see the forest for the trees, but think that chopping one tree down is like, that's the job. We did it, guys. It's all good.
A tree down. Hey.
But, so they're like people on Twitter saying, yeah, Cassidy will never get booked at cons again because she talks too much and she complains a lot. And I'm looking at the coming months like, okay, I have my second album coming out. I have an album coming out that's going to be on the Nintendo Switch coming. I have so much to look forward to, and it's all going to happen before I turn 25, which I don't think is that bad.
No, that's great.
I work really hard, and I don't want to say something cheesy like they hate to see you winning, but I think they hate to see me winning because I don't reflect what they think a successful pop-you-fur, big air quotes, ought to be. Yeah. Because, I don't want to go too personal with it, but
no, that's okay.
I did mention Majira earlier in the podcast. And as a young furry watching these videos in like 2014, 2015, I very quickly realized that Majira did not reflect the fandom that I wanted to be in myself. Like, yeah, the videos were funny for what they were, but I wanted to make music. I wanted to make art. I didn't want to just stream Mario Party on Twitch. Like, I want to do more. I have an animated movie script that I've been chipping away at, and I'm slowly putting stuff aside for that. Money, getting animators that used to be 2D animators in the 90s that are furries now. I'm contacting everybody. I have so much that I want to do, and it's so much bigger than like main stage at MFF or even just attending the biggest cons. I want to be a furry because it's the way that I express myself through my art. I want to be a furry musician because it's how I wanted to portray myself, because I never wanted people to judge me based on my face before listening to my music. I see it as like a Gorillaz type existence for my music.
Right. All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with me for a while. To all our listeners, remember you can help support our show through donations at Ko-Fi or Patreon or becoming a sponsor on Buzzsprout. You don't have to do any of that, but if you do, it helps us out. Or by purchasing merch at Redbubble, Bonfire, or now on Fourth Wall. We love that you listen, and we hope that to see you someday at a con. We can hug you tight with posies, as Taebyn always says. Cassidy, thanks again for coming on the show. And until next time, I say to everybody out there, Moobarkfluff and stay furry.
Bye.
Barely Furcasting is an Injured Nerve studio production and is found on all major podcast platforms or can be heard directly at barelyfurcasting.com. The opinions expressed here are those of the hosts and their guests, and no commercial compensation was granted. The Furcast is produced, recorded and directed by Barely Normal, aka Mike Began, and is edited by Barely and our associate editor Rain Raccoon. Opening and closing theme music, as well as some interstitial music, was created for Injured Nerves Productions for the use on the podcast by Reg Day with Damian Tanuki. If you would like to hear more music by Reg Day, you can search for Tweezerbeak on Bandcamp or Hoop Loop Tunes on SoundCloud. Other interstitial and background music by Shane Ivers through silvermansound.com. Gator Tots on SoundCloud.com, and the YouTube Free Is library. If you would like to send us a message, you can do so via email at barelyfurcasting@gmail.com, or on our Telegram chat at BFFT chat, on Twitter, on our Facebook page, or on the barelyfurcasting.com webpage. You can help support the show through donations at ko-fi.com/barelyfurcasting, or through Patreon at patreon.com/barelyfurcasting. Thanks for listening. We hope you come back and listen next week.